Thank you so much for joining. It's a real treat, right, to have you. When I have guests, sometimes we talk about wine, sometimes we talk about wine and hockey, sometimes we talk about wine and heavy metal, but I think you kind of cross, all three of those topics, right? So I think it's a real treat to have you. Obviously, I know you as I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit, but I know you as someone who has introduced me to uh, Slayer and Trouble and Candlemass and many other great metal bands. So it's really a treat to have you here. And the work you're doing right now on the 100 songs that shaped heavy metal podcast, I think is really a great listen. I've really been enjoying those lately. I don't know, add a little something to
Yeah,
to
awesome. Thanks, thanks on the podcast. I appreciate that. It's a lot of work. Yeah, it's called 100 Songs That Define Heavy Metal, and it's anywhere where you get your podcast. And we just talk about. It's not a list really. It's just 100 songs that, I or whoever I'm talking to feel are important. But it's a lot of fun. Had a lot of cool guests on there. And yeah, and I my day job is I run Metal Blade Records, and we've been around for 43 years and responsible for Metallica, Slayer, Cannibal Corpse, King Diamond, Killswitch Engage, Armored Saint, Fates Warning,
yeah.
on and on and on.
Yeah, and it's real, and it's I was going through kind of back in going through. I was going back into my memory banks, right? Because I had when I kind of got into the music, it was sort of around '83, and I remember there was there was Zebra, Iron Maiden, the Trooper, and then for somehow I got a hold of like Metal Massacre 3, and it just sort of like I was like, what is happening? And it never ended from there. I wanted to start. I'm going to start with wine. I've heard through whether it's some of your interviews, mentions of wine. I think Eddie Trunk even mentioned, he would tell stories about how you'd want to bring out nice wine, and I was wasted on him. And I know that I struggle when I go to tailgated concerts, getting people to imbibe in some wine. Maybe it's because I'm going with the pink bubbles is probably too extreme, but I was wondering how you got into wine and what maybe some of your favorites are.
Well, it's weird because the first time I went to France, excuse me, Paris, I was like 24 years old, and our distributor took me to this like really fancy French restaurant. And so, I go, what would you like to drink? I said, well, I'll have a Diet Coke. And said, we don't serve that here. Basically, they said, you're only drinking wine and water. And they ordered some wine and water. And I had tried the wine, and I did not like it at all. I was just kind of suffering, tasting some of it. I didn't like it at all. So for a long time, I didn't drink any red wine at all because I had it that one time. Like, I'm not into it. And I tried a couple of California wines, and not a fan of California wines at all, even though I grew up in California.
Yeah.
And I went to, there's a convention, it was a convention called Midem, which was basically the music business version of the Cannes Film Festival. It's in Cannes, France. It's beautiful on the beach. Of course, we were there in January. It was freezing cold every year. But, back when I first started going to this convention, in the hotels in France, there's like one English channel, and that was it. So I would just have that on. And the first morning, I think it was, of the convention, I got up, and there was this whole thing about this wine that they make in gravel. It's called Grave, of course, spelled great. It's because it's made in this gravelly soil. And I thought it was really interesting. And that night we went out to dinner at this famous, it's still there, by the way, famous Italian pizza restaurant called Vesuvio. And I looked, and they had this Grave wine on the menu. I go, oh, let's try this. I saw this report in the morning on this. Let's try this. And it was fantastic. I immediately fell in love with it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not like any kind of wine I've had before. So drank it that whole time, and just got super into specifically Bordeaux wines after that. But I like everything. I like literally like everything but California, even other parts of
everything but Cal. Okay.
Yeah, even like Idaho makes good wines. I mean, it's just kind of crazy how Texas, you can have good wines there, but for some reason the California stuff I never really got into. But my preferred wine would probably be Bordeaux.
Oh, that's fun. So this one I have here is a Bordeaux. It's from Fronsac. I figure this was deep and dark enough to be respectable with the black t-shirts that I figured we
There you
both
go.
have on. Oh, but that's a great story. That's funny that you had that first experience where it's just you're like, okay, maybe it's not for me, and then it hits you, and it's everybody kind of has a different story like that, and
I think too, your palate kind of changes as you get older too.
oh,
I think
without a doubt.
so young before is like, it's
Mhm.
not in it for me. But then later, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah, and even as you continue to age, the palate changes. What you are into in your 30s may not be what you're into in your 50s, and that I've definitely found that. Like I gravitate much more in. I mean, I always liked Italian wines, but I gravitate much more into Italy now as a mild obsession, if you will. But I like to try. I like to try everything, right? It
Yeah.
drives me crazy. Like it drives me crazy to try to, like when friends who just like, oh, Coors Light, Coors Light, Coors Light. I'm like, I could never do that. And I think that's the great thing about wine is that, which can also be a risk, right? You don't always know what you're going to get in that bottle, but it makes it so much more interesting.
Yeah, and I've tried wines from all over the world, and like I said, everything that I've had for the most part has been really good. Again, for whatever reason, my palate in California just don't exist. I do
Mm.
kind of like some of the Paso Robles reds, and I
Yeah.
can't do white wine at all. It just gives me an instant headache. So it's only red for me.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, some people actually have the opposite effect, or
I know.
usually with red wine, not necessarily a headache, but I have a number of friends who are like, yeah, I can't drink red wine. I get reflux and stuff like that. But at least, okay, that's good. At least you can drink the red. So we won't talk about any whites. And Paso Robles makes sense to some extent because it's less like California, right? They seem to have more of a European influence, so it does make sense that you'd like that as part of the California, given the France idea.
Yep.
So that's cool. So I'm going to shift the topic slightly to hockey because hockey season has finally started. Of course, I'm an Islanders fan, so the season's over. But now I know that. So you grew up in Los Angeles, and I know you have some history with the Kings. But I see. But you split time in Vegas? Because I know I see a lot of Vegas Golden Knights stuff, and I wondered if are you still a Kings guy, or are you
I mean,
um,
I'm a hockey fan, but I will
okay?
say, I split time between actually Vegas and Dallas. I'm at Dallas
Oh,
today.
Dallas. Okay. Okay.
But I've been I've been a night season ticket holder since day one, so I
Mhm.
probably pull for them more than any other team. But I like the Stars. I still like the Kings. Instead of a hockey fan, like, I don't really root specifically for a lot of teams. Sometimes I just like a lot of different. I just love the sport and
Yeah.
love to watch it. There's a couple of teams I don't like so much. More because of the style of play they play.
Okay.
Unfortunately, your Islanders kind of being one of them. They're a little boring, but I will say this kid that they got, the defenseman Schaefer, he's going to
Yeah.
be good. I don't know if they should play him the whole year this year. He probably needs a little more seasoning, but he's going to be good.
Maybe. Yeah. It's pretty wild when you see an 18-year-old who seems to be the best player on the team
Yeah,
early, and which doesn't bode well for the rest of the team. I think the Islanders' style of play though is getting a little more exciting, or a little less, trap and boring and defensive as it was for a while.
yeah.
But they kind of had a formula figured out, so it was actually working for them until it just got to a point where it's now really it's really rough. But it's funny. I can like when it comes. I mean, growing up, I would. So I grew up. I'm from Long Island, so I grew up right in the smack in the middle of that Stanley Cup dynasty. So that's where that never leaves you. Um, but I used to watch all kinds of sports, and every sport, no matter what, whether it's baseball or football, even basketball back then. Like I can't watch basketball anymore. But like you just said, the hockey game, especially during the playoffs, when the games are on every night, you have a different game on. It's just you can sit down and watch it, and it's just the game is just fantastic. It's funny, as you think back to how the game was played way back when, right, let's just say in the late 70s and 80s, and versus how it is now, and it's a really different game, and it's interesting to see like how the plays changed over the years, and also like I don't know how those guys used to play without helmets. They would beat the hell out of each other. And it was just such a different game. Like how some of those guys lasted for 15 years just blows my mind the more that you see some of those old highlights. Like and then when I talk about like football or baseball, I can watch an hour and then I'm just kind of I'm out. I can't do it. I haven't been to a game in a while, so I have to get up to a Bruins game because I live in Rhode Island now, so it's Boston's an easy one to get to. Like, are there any things in the NHL that you're looking forward to this year? Anything that's kind of striking your interest more than anything else?
By the way, just so you know, the Islanders were a big part of why I became a super fan of hockey. Growing up as a kid in Los Angeles, we had a lot of rinks, and we had the the Sharks and the WHA and the Kings. But I was
Hmm.
into all sports. I played baseball from 5 to 18, and that was my whole world.
Yeah.
But the NHL was not on TV for a while. But in 19, I think it was either 80 or 81. I can't remember which one, but a local TV station picked up the Islanders Stanley Cup games and was showing them at like 11 o'clock at night, which is kind of when I was winding my day down. I'd turn the TV on and watch some stuff to kind of wind down. And then they showed these games, and I got super into it, became a big fan of the Islanders, and I started going to Kings games live. And then a friend of mine had season tickets and sold them to me when they were super cheap back then. And I
Mm.
just became a massive hockey fan from that. So the Islanders always have a place in my heart for that. And those early 80s Islander teams were just spectacular.
Yeah, yeah.
But this year, I mean, I'm just looking forward to the season. I mean, it's kind of my therapy. That's I can kind of shut everything down and just watch some hockey and not think about all the other nonsense going on. So I just love that, and I'm just excited for the season to start. I mean, it's going to be really interesting because they become really competitive. I mean, Panthers still probably are the best team in the league, but they're going to face some struggles this year with Barkov being out for the season.
Hmm.
Hopefully back for the playoffs, and Kachuk's not going to play until January. So there's probably about 8 or 9 teams that have a legit shot, depending on injuries and everything else, how it's going to go. So I'm excited to see the Knights, how they go, with Mitch Marner, and they've got some holes too, though, in goaltending and defense, which you kind of saw in the first few games.
Yeah,
Stars
yeah.
look good, which is cool because I have season tickets to both the Stars and the Knights. So
It's a lot of hockey.
yeah, and I've pretty much seen everything hockey wise. I've been to World Cups, World Championships, Stanley Cup Finals, Memorial Cups, World Juniors, college hockey, Frozen Fours, everything. The only thing I've never been to is the Winter Classic. I'm
Okay.
lucky enough to have a lot of friends that work for the NHL. And I hang out with all these media guys all the time, and it's super cool. They've kind of invited me into their little world. So I've had opportunities to go, but I do not like the cold at all. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to go somewhere and be frozen to do that. But this year it's in Miami,
I was gonna
where
say
it's
I
in
don't know how they're
Miami.
gonna pull that off, but yeah.
So finally going to be able to go to a game. Well, there is a roof on that building. So what they're going to do is keep the roof closed the whole time and get the rink all done and keep it cold inside, just like you would at a regular arena. And then about 30 minutes before the game, they're going to open the roof. And then hopefully
Okay.
the weather will be decent. But I'm going to go to that, so I'm going to be fun. And plus, spending New Year's Eve in Miami is never a terrible thing either. So
That's fair. I can buy that. Yeah, the experience of I mean, growing up with a lot of games in the Nassau Coliseum was one thing, but I was doing some work in Montreal for probably the better part of like 3 years. I was up there a lot, and one time we went to a Canadians game. It was against the Atlanta Thrashers. It was in October, right? It meant nothing. It was one of the worst games I've ever seen, like from a hockey play perspective. But you would not have known that from the crowd. It was like it was electric, and just there was an energy in the building that I had never experienced. And I think it was later that year. It was either that year or the next year where the Canadians won their first round of the playoffs, and I happened to be up there when they won that the last the series, and I was a little nervous because I thought the city was going to burn down. I was like, this is just round one, and I was like, what's going to happen?
they're crazy. I went to the World Cup of hockey in 2006, I believe it was. I went to pretty much all the games that were being held. The first few games were being held in Montreal, then it was Minnesota, and then it finished up in Toronto. I went to most of it. So I went to the early, this is the early games, the first couple of games in Montreal. I went with my buddy, if you can see the shirt, Lizzie Borden, and he kind of came late because he wasn't sure he was going to make it. So he came late, so I couldn't get him in my hotel. So I had to put him in another hotel down the street. So we saw two games. I forget who the first game was. It wasn't Canada, but the second game was Canada, and Canada won. This is the first game of the tournament. Canada won. So the next day I see him, and we're both going to go to Minneapolis for a couple games. And so I see him, we're getting ready to go to the airport. I was like, how'd you sleep? Everything okay at the hotel? I said, I slept like an hour. I'm like, why? Apparently all night long he was on the party street.
Okay.
The entire city was just partying all night long because they won the first game in the World Cup, which was, somewhat meaningless, but same thing. They are so into their hockey out there. It's crazy.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Because even now I'm thinking back to when I was up in Montreal during the World Juniors, I think it was, or maybe the World Junior Cup or something. But it was like then it was a final. And Canada was in it. And it was like the whole city stopped, to watch the game. It was like, and especially in like the hotel bar where they had a really nice setup of TVs, and it was packed. And I was like, these 15-year-olds, right? What am I not understanding? But it's just, yeah, it's
that's a great tournament, though.
So ingrained, up there. It's amazing. Yeah, I'm glad that hockey season has started because it's. Well, I'm also a Jet fan, so football season's over.
Oh, yeah, it's just sorry about that.
I don't live and die by them anymore, which is good because I've learned my lesson. Good thing that hockey season has started. So now I want to shift. I'm gonna go into the music world, because when we started talking, I mentioned I could list like 25 bands. I'm sure that you've been. Either worked with at some point, responsible for breaking, or even just that were a part of the Metal Massacre compilation stuff, which I loved. There was also a double CD that had something to do with something that happened at the LA Forum back and this was like 88, 89 it came out. I don't know what it was, but I know I think your Metal Blade had a part in it. Or maybe it was just that some of the artists were on this.
Foundations Forum, maybe?
Foundations Forum, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And it was the only heavy metal convention that was.
Foundations Forum. Thank you. And it was because I don't have any of my old CDs, and I sold them all off, and everything's digitized. But I thought back, and I was like, wait, I wonder if there was. I feel like there was a Metal Blade connection to that, and I just remember just almost. Just wearing that double CD out, and
that was a good one. Yeah, we were heavily involved in that whole convention, and and the whole thing. So yeah, that was a lot of fun back then.
So I have my Armored Saint 40th anniversary of the March of the Saint, because I saw them. So it's probably it was last year at some point. They were touring with Queensryche, and I was just, it was the second time I had seen Armored Saint, but the time before they were opening up for Wasp, and John Bush had gotten sick, so they had a replacement singer.
Oh no.
And I think it was the guy from Dangerous Toys, maybe. He did a great job, but it just wasn't.
Yeah, Jason. Yeah, he's good.
Yes, yeah, and he did a great job, but it just wasn't the same. So, but when I saw them this past year, I was totally blown away by the energy that they brought. And it, for me, I'm in my mid-50s. Like, you see guys like this, they get up on stage and they're just ripping it up, and it's always very inspiring. I always feel like I'm not doing enough physically with my Armored Saint, especially the early albums, but even the live one that you were involved with. I just like those things. I just completely wore them out during the 80s, and I didn't realize how much how deep my Armored Saint knowledge went, or the love for Armored Saint, until I saw this particular tour, and I was just like, I'm now my life is almost complete, right? And I think Queensryche was also playing the Warning front to back, so that helped.
Yeah.
But I happened to see, it was either yesterday or today, I saw some snippet on some social media about, it was John Bush talking about how you guys are gonna record another album with them, or he
Yeah,
mentioned something up. So I
they're
was
recording it now, actually. Well, they've
oh
been on the road with Michael Schenker, and now they're finishing up the tour with a couple of headline shows. Which, sadly, I'm in Dallas today, and they're playing in
yes
Vegas tomorrow, and I can't get there,
okay
so I need to be two
yeah
people sometimes. But yeah, they're
yeah
in the studio working on it. I've heard snippets of it, and it sounds really, really good. Those guys continue to surprise me. Keep making really good music
yeah
at this point. The last couple of records have done fantastic for them, and
hmm
they're
hmm
touring the world, and they're doing more touring and working more now than they probably ever have in their whole career, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I was like, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. It's like it's amazing when you see some of and even some of the newer music that comes out of out of some bands. You're like, my God, like to still be able to create that, at the advanced age. Are there any so I mean I think I don't want to get off of Armored Saint just yet, but like I don't like to me I don't understand how they weren't bigger than they were. That's like one of the bands I will always be amazed at how they're not talked about in the same breath as some of the biggest, metal bands like and because
I mean, most of it honestly was timing. Like
yeah,
Symbol Salvation, which is one of my favorite records of all time, and so happy to make that record. I think it's a brilliant record, but it came out in 1991. If that would
it
have
was
came
a
out in
rough time. Yeah, yeah.
1989, it probably would have been massively huge. But it came
Hmm
out in
hmm
1991. But I look at these things a little bit differently. Like, okay, let's say they had a gold record in 1989, 90. You know, how would that have changed the trajectory of their career? Maybe they would have gone back to a major label and had different influences. And I look at the music business more as a marathon than a sprint. And a lot of
Sure.
bands who were super popular in the 80s aren't popular at all now or aren't doing anything. Where
Mhm.
Armored Saints still around, still making quality music, still doing tons of touring. They're active musicians making a life out of music and being able to perform it and not have to work day jobs. So
Yeah,
in
yeah.
a way, they, like I said, they kind of have won the race, and I could say that about a bunch of other bands that never had the one big record. But if you look at the embodiment of their whole career, they've sold, I don't know, 1.5 million, 2 million records probably
hmm
overall
hmm
in their whole career, and they're still doing it. And like you said, they're still doing it at a high level. So it's
Yeah.
it's a win for them, I think, too.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. Are there any newer bands that you're excited about that maybe I should know about, or that you would want to
There's so
make sure
many of
that
them.
people are checking out?
There's so
So,
many of them. It kind of depends on where
well, if you
you're.
talk slowly, I'll do graphics so that it's easy, and maybe I'll even put up like album covers and stuff like
Well, it kind
that.
of depends on it's a wide variety of stuff now, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you're like the heavy stuff, there's really heavy stuff that's really good. But I'll give you a couple. Like if you like Armored Saint, we have a band called. Well, I'll get to them in a second, but so Bruce Dickinson, who's one of my
Mhm.
favorite singers of all time, is a massive fan of this band. He's played them on his radio show a couple of times, and I just thought, well, his kids are huge fans of Metal Blade and of the heavier music. And this band's kind of all over the place. You can't really describe what it is, but it's a band called Igor. And Bruce even he did an interview in
Okay.
Europe, and they asked him, like, "Is there any new bands you like?" He goes, "Oh my God, I
Yeah.
love this band Igor. It's amazing. This French guy and doing all this crazy stuff, and it's the new record's doing phenomenal." Huge success. They're doing a whole worldwide tour. They're playing in Europe now, but you can't describe it because it literally is everything. It's like kind of parts of this synthwave thing, which is kind of part metal EDM. Then it's classical. They have a classical female singer, and then it's kind of like Gojira, and then it gets really heavy, and then it's like a jazz part of the piano. It's all over the place, but it works, and it's
Okay.
so
Okay.
different and unique that it's just super cool.
It's
So,
super cool.
so that's kind
Yeah.
of the one thing that we have out now that is really good. That's not super heavy. We have a band called Two to Stab Wounds. They feel like the heavy stuff. They're
hmm hmm
thrash metal meets Power Trip meets Cannibal Corpse, kind of,
Yeah.
more or less. So
Yeah.
they're doing really well, but that's on the heavy side. So I get it that some people aren't into.
I do well with thrash, but to a certain point, right? It's like some of the it's if it gets too much into that death metal type of vibe, that's when I sort of I lose it a little bit. Although there is some stuff that, I can't stop listening to that. That would be much angrier than I'm typically used to.
No, okay, that's good. I mean,
No, that's what,
Monomarth
yeah.
is one of
Yeah,
these
yeah, they're
bands that's kind
fun.
of transcending everything. Where the last, I call them an arena band now, because the last 4 times I've seen them in the U.S., they're all playing arenas. Where they're opening
Mhm.
for Pantera, opening for Ghost, or headlining. They headline Honda Center in L.A. and the Forum in L.A. on their own, which
Mhm.
is just blows my mind, because I grew up going to shows in both of those venues, and then going there and seeing Monomarth is just kind of mind blowing to see, like, God, there's only, there's 12,000 people here, and
Mm.
just heavier bands playing there. But even a guy like Eddie Trunk, who's not really if you don't know Eddie Trunk, he's a famous radio guy, and he's
Yeah,
TV,
yeah, no, I'm
the whole thing.
well
Uh,
aware. Well aware, yeah.
but he's not into the heavier vocals, but he
Sure.
called me one day because he's half part-time in Vegas, and he said, hey, I think I want to go see a Monomarth, because they're playing the Pearl Theater in at the Palms in Vegas. It was a beautiful theater. I said, cool, well, come with me. So he came, and he's like, I can't believe I really like this, because the music is really just Iron Maiden, basically, and the vocals are a little heavier, but they're still kind of melodic, and
Mhm.
he was kind of into it. Played them on his radio show a few times, which is kind of amazing. So that was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, my friend Steve is a big Amon Amarth fan, and they were opening for Megadeth the first time I saw them. And I was like, all right, what am I getting into here? And it was just, and I was like, I was like, wow, all right, I need a shirt.
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, Amon Amarth's coming back, so now it's like a thing. But
That's cool. And there's another really interesting band too. That's another European band, a female singer that's kind of a little bit unique too, called Messa. And they've been getting a
okay,
really big buzz. Messa. They're like
all
really
right.
cool. They have a new record came out a couple months ago, and it's a good buzz on them. And it's not death metal, so it's good.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that's good. I appreciate all the time. I know you're still sort of in your workday to some extent, so I appreciate you
Oh
taking the
no!
time.
After I'm done
No?
with you, I'm turning on TNT and watching some hockey.
All right. Well, that's good. Oh, that's
I'm in
true.
Dallas, so it's already
Dallas
6:30.
is
So,
playing. Yeah,
but
yeah.
my workday could go on for 4 hours. Who knows?
That's true. That's true. Well, no, I do. But I do appreciate the time and all the and this was a fun conversation. Like I said, it's odd. It's not every day that I get to combine those three topics.
Yeah,
Usually it's one or two, but not all three. So this was great, and I appreciate you taking the time.
yeah, of course.